Welcome to Game Foundry Reviews. In this video, we're going to take a look at Pixel Tactics. Pixel Tactics is a two-player card game in which players are battling pixelated armies to defeat the other player's leader. Let's jump right in with a description of the rules, see a few example turns being played, then I'll be back for some closing remarks.
This is the setup for Pixel Tactics. To set up, each player picks a color and draws a hand of 5 cards in that color. So this player has the red deck, and this player has the blue deck. Also, you randomly determine the first player, who takes the first player current wave marker, and the other player takes the second player current wave marker. Players agree how many rounds they're going to play, usually best of 3 or best of 5, and then aside from that, there's just a pool of damage tokens set here. At the beginning of the game, players will select their leader, and the game is played in rounds composed of 3 waves: the vanguard, the flank, and the rear wave. During each wave, each player is going to get 2 actions, and they're going to alternate turns. The game ends when one player's leader is defeated. So let's first go through that leader phase. So each player has their hand of 5 cards, looks at them, and all cards can either be heroes on this side or leaders on the other side. And you can tell the leader side because they're usually very strong and they have a special ability associated with them. So at the beginning of the game, you're only going to look at that leader side of the cards, and both players are going to pick one and put it face down in their area, and that's going to be their leader for the game. If by chance both players pick the same leader, however, they would take them, put them at the bottom of their deck, draw a new card, and repeat this once more. So once both players have chosen their leader, they just flip them face up, and that's going to be their leader for the game. They can share their ability with the other player. Turn order and the current wave are marked by these cards here, and we always start with the vanguard wave, and during each wave, players are going to get 2 actions. The first player goes first and the second player, then they're going to shift down. Once they get to the bottom and they've taken 2 actions in the final, they're going to go back up to the vanguard, but the player order is going to switch like so. Possible actions a player can take during a turn are draw, recruit, attack, order, clear corpse, and or restructure. So let's go first with draw a card, because that's the simplest. You just draw the top card of your deck, and that's one action. You add it to your hand. You can certainly do that twice in a turn, but that would be your whole turn. There's no hand size limits in Pixel Tactics. Once your deck is out, you never reshuffle it to form a new deck, so it's important to understand those cards are all you get. Next, you can pick one of your cards and play it as an action card, basically. It's called an order, and that's this purple layer right here. So you would do whatever this says, discard it, and that's one action. So this guy doesn't get to join your unit, but you'll use him like an action card. The next action is to clear a corpse. When guys are defeated in Pixel Tactics, they don't get discarded immediately. They flip over and they become corpses. For an action, you can remove any corpse anywhere, just one corpse though, and you just discard it. So those first 3 actions, draw a card, play an order, and clear a corpse, you can do any number of times in a turn. They are unlimited actions. The next 3 actions, however, restructure, recruit a hero, or attack with the hero or leader, are exclusive actions. And we're going to explain what that means in a little bit. So the first one is restructure, and that just means you take a hero and you move them to any empty space in your area. So for instance, he could have moved from the rear to the vanguard like so. Next is to recruit a hero, and you can only recruit a hero to the current wave, and all you do is take a hero from your hand and play him on an empty space. Can't be played on a corpse, can't be played on a space with another guy, an empty space, and that's where that hero is going to be in your unit. And the last action is attack, and there's a few different ways a hero can attack, and we'll go over those in a moment, but first I want to explain the meaning of exclusive actions. Because attack, restructure, and recruit are all exclusive actions, one hero can only do one of them in a turn. That means if a player is recruited, he cannot then restructure, nor can he then attack that same turn. Same way with restructuring and attacking, you cannot restructure then attack, or any combination of those 3. Each hero can only perform one such action during a turn. Also, before we go into detail in the attacks, I do want to point out during the first round of the game, that means until this first player marker actually switches to the other player, no attacks can be made. It's called the turn 1 or round 1 ceasefire. After that, however, there's a few different ways heroes can attack, and one such way is to melee. Everybody can melee, even your leader, and you can see their attack power right there at the top of their card. So for instance, this guy's attack power is 1, so he would do 1 damage. In order to be in melee, you have to be the front person in your column. So right now, for instance, this hero is not in melee because this guy is in front of him, and you can only melee against the front person in another column. So let's just lay some things out. Even though, for instance, this guy is back here, he's still the front. Also, corpses do not obstruct, so this character, for instance, Oracle, could melee this character. I do want to remind you, though, that you can only attack within the current wave. So if we're down here in the rear wave, there's certainly nobody down there that's even in play, so that no one could attack. So if you can attack and be attacked by melee attacks, you are considered for the game purposes in melee, which matters for some card effects. In addition to melee, there are ranged attacks, and ranged attack will say it right on the card. So, for instance, if this guy is in the blue area, remember, wherever the guy is, that shows what different effects he'll have. So if he's in the rear flank, he has ranged attack. attack. And what ranged attack does is it allows you to attack anybody. You don't have to be in melee, nor do they. So for instance, this character could attack this one using his normal strength value, just like if he meleeed. There's also, however, intercept abilities. And for instance, the Overlord has the intercept ability. That means that you cannot ranged attack over him. So if he was in this column, this guy could still attack the Oracle here or anyone behind the Oracle, but he could not attack behind the Overlord, in the Overlord's column, because the Overlord has intercept. He could still attack the Overlord with his ranged attack, however. Also, let's pretend this character wasn't here, and this guy now is in melee because he's the front person in his column. He can still use a melee attack if he chooses to, instead of using the ranged attack, but since he's in the blue row, he can use either. Finally, there's attack powers, and they have a megaphone next to them, which means you have to activate. There's also passive effects like intercept that aren't going to have a megaphone because they're always in effect. But if you see this megaphone here, you can activate that just like an attack and you do what it says. This one is look at the opponent's hand, discard a card in it. So instead of using a melee, he could do that. But remember, because attack is an exclusive action, he cannot melee and use that attack or use that attack multiple times. Even though it causes no damage, activating the card in such a way still counts as an attack. I also want to make it clear that in the game, heroes and leaders are distinctly different. So if an effect specifies heroes, it does not affect leaders and vice versa. So during a turn, units are going to accumulate damage, and you just put them with these tokens here to indicate how much damage they've taken from attacks. At the end of each round, meaning both players have had one chance to go, any character that has taken lethal damage, which is equal or greater than his health value, which is in this shield here, is going to become a casualty. And you do not calculate this until the end of the whole round. So the first player takes 2 actions, then the second player 2 actions, then you check. So if, for instance, if this guy had 6 damage, he only has 5 health, he would then become a corpse, and he's flipped over at this time. So after each casualty phase, you move on to the next wave just by indicating it with these current wave markers. The game ends when one player's leader is defeated, and that player will lose the game. If both leaders are defeated at the same turn, whoever has the most living heroes left in the unit wins. So when a player wins, he takes his leader and removes it from the game, and then he takes his opponent leader and puts it face down in front of him as a trophy. So now for the rest of the game, we know that he's won that many rounds. However, if the game is totally drawn, meaning both leaders die in the same turn and both players have the same number of living heroes, each player takes the opponent's and gets 1 trophy in that manner. However, draws cannot end a match, so if that was the last trophy one player needed, he will not get the trophy of their player. It will just be removed from the game, but that player may still get theirs. As it's okay to score that way, but it's not okay to win the game that way. Play proceeds until one player has the number of trophies that they agreed on at the beginning of the game. If it was a best out of 5, it would be 3 trophies. If it was a best out of 3, it would be 2 trophies. If the game's not over, another round begins, and each player draws 1 extra card at the beginning of the game for each trophy their opponent possesses. Also, the player who won the previous game always goes first. It's a little bit of a disadvantage in this game to go first because during that first round of the game, no attacks can be made. It's also important to note that after each round, you're going to have 1 less leader in your deck, so be careful which leader you pick because you're only going to get to use that card in that round of the game. Let's get going with this example playthrough. So each player got a hand of 5 cards, which are for their eyes only, but we're keeping them face up here to make it easy to see, and has chosen their leader, which they put face down. So they flip them up at the same time, and it's not the same leaders, so they're going to be okay. This guy allows him to select the target of another player's melee attack instead of that player picking, and this allows for a player to summon a guy and then attack immediately after the first round of the game, of course, when no attacks can be made. So this player's first, so he gets to do 2 actions. For his first action, he's just going to draw a card, which he adds to his hand, and for his second action, he's going to draw another card. So that was 2 actions for him, so now he's done, and he's got a whole big hand of cards. Now it's this player's turn to decide what he wants to do. He's also going to draw a card, and then he's going to play that card that he just drew as a recruit action into the Vanguard wave. Remember, you can only recruit in the active wave, and as long as that player is here, that's his ability. He doesn't have his flank ability or his rear ability. Also, he can never be used as an order unless he returns to that player's hand. But he does have intercept, and he does have +2 strength when he's in that Vanguard wave. So now that both players have taken an action, we move down to the next wave, and we continue. Again, this player is going to do a draw for his first action, and then for his second action, he's going to lay out this card here. And again, he can only play it in this wave, and that's has the green ability because we're in the flank wave in the middle, which is green. And then it's this player's turn. Play's going to proceed like this. We'll jump back next round so you can see some attacks. Welcome back. This player just finished his 2 actions in the rear phase, so we're going to switch these cards. So now this guy is second player, and this guy is first player. So now players can start attacking because the first round of the game is over. And this player has the ability with Juto where he can play a guy and then immediately attack with him as a free action. Even though normally you could not recruit a guy and attack on the same turn because they are exclusive actions. For his first action, he's going to attack with Homunculus, and he gets +2 attack strength because he's in that red zone, so he actually has 5 attack strength. and he would love to target him, but this leader's ability is he gets to choose the target of a melee attack. So he chooses the healer, who unfortunately takes 5 damage. Even though that's enough to kill the healer, because her health is only 4, she does not die until the casualty step at the end of a round. So as his second action, he's going to play an Oracle and use Juto's ability to immediately make an attack with him, so he can look at the opponent's hand and discard 1 card in. Remember, he could melee, or he could just use an attack. So he looks at the cards and he makes the guy discard his scientist. So his scientist is out of the game. So now it's this player's turn, and he decides he's going to lay out a homunculus there and an overlord here. Now at the end of the turn, since this guy has taken enough damage, unfortunately the healer has become a casualty. And then the gameplay continues as so. Welcome back. Another round has passed and there's some more casualties on the board. This player is now the first player, and he's going to use this order effect. And what that does is it restores a corpse to full life. I do want to point out here that this counts as this guy is sort of being recruited, so he can't perform an attack this turn or anything like that. He had to be there face up at the beginning of the turn to be able to do so. Then he gets 1 more action, and he's going to attack with his overlord for 3 onto this guy here. So we put 3 damage onto him, and then it becomes this guy's turn. We'll come back closer to the end of the game and see what that looks like. The second player just finished his 2 actions, so now we're in the casualty step. This guy becomes a casualty, as does this guy. Unfortunately for this player, so does his leader, because he's taken 16 damage and he only has 15 health. So we know that this player's been defeated and blue is victorious this round. Had it gone 1 more turn though, as this guy was totally out of cards and the last thing in his hand wasn't very helpful, this guy would have likely won. So now that this player wins, he removes his leader from the game as well as the opponent's, but he keeps the opponents in front of him as a trophy to signify that he's won 1 round. So now all the cards are shuffled up, a new round begins, but since this guy has 1 trophy, this guy's going to start with 6 cards in his hand as opposed to 5. Then they're going to keep playing until they reach the pre-required number of wins.
Pixel Tactics is fantastic. I really like how all the cards have so many different abilities. They can be played as a leader, or depending where they're placed on the board, they have different effects. Also, they can just be discarded from your hand like an action card. It keeps the game so varied, so different, and allows for a lot of different tactical and strategical play. Also, because there's only 25 cards in your deck, I think this is more strategic than people realize, because you kind of have to strategize around what's coming and what's already come, because after a few plays, you should start to get a good bearing on the things in your deck. Also, I really love the asymmetrical symmetry, and what I mean by that is both players, even though the cards are so varied, have that same deck of 25 cards. So you definitely have an understanding of what's coming out. And while you're going to have different abilities on the board and definitely a different leader ability, you know, everybody really has access to the same types of things. So the way you play them makes for a very interesting game. Considering the low price point of this and just the limited amount of shelf space that it takes up, this may be, by most, dollar for dollar, one of the best purchases I've ever made. This game is great. I would recommend it to people, you know, that enjoy 2-player gaming. I do play a lot of 2-player gaming, so it fits in perfectly with what I like. Also, the theme of, you know, fighting a battle may not be for everybody, especially if you do a lot of playing with your spouse, but nonetheless, I think this game is fantastic, and it's definitely worth giving it a try, as it's only a couple bucks. If it looks fun to you, check it out. That's Pixel Tactics.